Welcome back, everybody, to Chazin-the-Dream. I'm Ethan Chazin, a New York-based organization development coach, and I'm just jumping right now. I want to introduce to the program Drew Deraney, who joins us for, the first episode of season 2. Nothing like kicking off a new season with a rock star, and I just want to give you a little bit of insight into Drew. So he's the father of 3, and for most of his life, he was concerned about what other people thought about him and how he was supposed to act. And he learned not to be his authentic self and instead become a people pleaser. And as he said to me in some previous conversations, a man wearing a mask. And I want to just share with you before Drew gets officially introduced, over a 9-month span, a few years back, he endured 4 separate face-shaking life events that caused him to question his own existence. And as a result of confronting those traumatic events head on, he became determined to find a better way to live. And so part of the reason I'm having him on the program today is these traumatic events would have derailed most likely other people, at least people I've known personally, but they led Drew to turn his experiences, those traumatic experiences, into a passion for helping other people to tell their story. So he's made that discovery, that to be happy, he'd have to adhere to his own standards of honesty, integrity, and truth. And in other words, being authentic. And he needed to break free from the belief system that was anchored onto him for going on 50 years. So that discovery has led Drew, and this is how I discovered Drew, to launch his Mindful Man movement, which we're going to talk about today, and create his podcast from caving in to crushing it. Drew's found his purpose to empower other men like us who are ready to do the same at this point in their lives and their career. So Drew formed a men's group, launched a coaching practice to provide a safe space for men to share without judgment and in the process to transform themselves. Drew, welcome to Chasing the Dream.
I am privileged to be here, sir. It's good to see you, Ethan.
Likewise, my brother. So we're just going to jump into the deep end of the pool and see if there's water. Can you talk right out of the gate about the experiences that you were kind enough to share with me, and from the perspective of how they formed your mindset into what being authentic means, and especially as that can help other people, as we were just talking about, think about a job transition, re-entering the workforce, or finding their passion.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I always start with that, greater than 50% of our belief systems form by the age of between 7 and 10 years old. And by the time we're 18, 90% of our belief system is formed, and I say formed for us, from the people around us. At 18, we don't know what it is to live life. So we've been given this roadmap, usually a linear roadmap, from people saying, if you do A plus B plus C plus D, E is going to happen. And that's how life starts for most of us. And by the age of 18, we're then told to embark on an adult life of unknowns. And therein lies the beginning of the true journey. And I say true journey because I had opportunities along the way to realize that I wasn't living my own belief system. And I either didn't notice them or ignored them or didn't know what to do with them and were afraid of taking any chances. So I basically lived that handed down to me life for 50 some odd years until those 4 2x4s hit me upside the head. So I'll lead it off with that stat, which is mind-boggling in and of itself.
One of the things, Drew, that when we were first talking, as you were kind of sharing with me this chronology of how we progress as individuals from little life forms to those who are cast out on their own life journey. I was just shaking my head with you. Yeah, all along. I mean, I was told you go straight from high school to college. I was ill prepared and should have never gone to college and suffered for the first 2 years and had to withdraw. The other thing was I was encouraged to go get a business degree, an MBA, which was a waste of about 4 years and $250,000. So preach on. I mean, can you talk about the formative events that you alluded to just now in your life and how those kind of gave you this higher purpose?
Absolutely. And the first thing I'll say is each individual, I call them faith-shaking moments because I had a lower self-identity. When you follow somebody else's belief system, one tends to be unsure of who he really is. And so in order to fit in every place you go, when you talk about fitting in, you put a mask on, you become a different person to align with the people you're with or with their philosophies. So I found myself not realizing it. Everywhere I went, I would just adapt like a chameleon to the environment or the people I'm with. And what I mean by that is if I'm if I'm in an environment where there are the popular people were, whether it was middle school or high school, I would just do a little people watching, see how they acted and listen to what they said, and I would act accordingly. Therefore, I'd fit in and be accepted. And then when that happens, it releases these chemicals in your body, making you feel good about yourself because you fit in. But deep down, when you realize a lot of that is empty, you don't feel good about yourself. So fast forward to the first faith-shaking moment. I'd say it began, which it wasn't really big. It began a lot earlier. I just didn't realize it. I got my best friend let me know that my wife was going to leave me because she contacted him and his wife, because we were close with them, to look out for me when, of course, he was going to tell me. So I wasn't blindsided after the fact, but I was blindsided learning that for a variety of reasons of which I was unaware. When you are a people pleaser most of your life because of the stuff I told you about, when you're kind of going around, you're pleasing everybody, you're hurting yourself in the process. And so first I learned she was going to leave me. Went through 3 years of mediation to protect the children from the court system. In those 3 years, I still did damage to myself because I still thought I could change her mind. So here I am, the people pleaser, trying to change her mind, not realizing that she had her mind set. She already was on to plan A and fast forward, and I'm here trying to find plan B and C to keep the family together. So the divorce was final in April of 18. So there's your first marker where I walk out of the courthouse with a piece of paper, and that's legal closure. There are other closures that usually never really materialize because people say time heals all wounds, and that's bull. That's a lie. Right. What time does, it allows you to put layers and layers and layers above the wound to cover it up, unless you address it and understand, get yourself through that trauma. So the legal closure was one piece. And I did have a positive mindset after that because I had time to think about it. And I kind of transformed over that time to realize it was for the best, the divorce. So I was going to rise up and have chapter 2 of my life. 6 months later, October 6th was my 50th birthday. Threw myself a 50th birthday party, and I invited everybody you can imagine from my life, and everybody showed up. I mean, it was like one of the wonderful, most beautiful days of my life because it really showed who I was over that time frame, and the right people came, the people who I wanted to come. Little did I know what was going to be coming down the pike, because right about the same time, I was in 24 years of healthcare. So the last hospital I was with, I submitted a HIPAA violation, which is if we misplace or lose patient information, we need to report it to the compliance officer. Right. So I did that. 10 days after I reported it, which happened to be 10 days around after my birthday, I got fired. Leadership change. So
as punishment or retribution for
no one would say that.
Well, it wasn't stated, but we know that was
right. But we're talking about corporate culture. If you're an at-will employee, I don't have to tell them why I'm leaving, and they don't have to tell me why they're letting me go. Correct. So, they didn't have a progressive discipline policy, so it was leadership change. Wow, pretty broad. Locked out of my email, escorted to my car, couldn't go to my office. The manager in my office who perpetrated the HIPAA violation, she reported up to me, was charged with shipping all my stuff to my home. And then 7 weeks later on LinkedIn, you get this alert, congratulate so-and-so on her promotion. So she was promoted to my director's position after that, and I'm told leave. So in a man's mind, and I'm going to say a man's mind because men, especially men who have lower self-identities, align their self-identity with external circumstances. So I define myself from my wife and my job.
And that's what I was just going to ask you. I'm glad you kind of nailed it. Is why is this notion of being authentic so powerful for men, especially in our culture?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my life was my family and my profession, and losing both of them in 6 months, um, started to make me think, you know what? If I start being myself, this stuff's going to happen anyway. So let me just be myself, you know? And so that's when the turnaround started to happen after that job firing, because I was going to be done with the healthcare environment, because I felt I could make a bigger impact on the outside. 10 days after I was fired, my son ended up having suicidal ideations. He was the one most affected by the divorce and really close to his mom. So that kind of started shifting my brain to forget about me, think about him. At this point, though, I'm starting to shift into a blame and victim mindset, though. I wasn't getting stronger. I was blaming the wife for the divorce, the boss for the firing. Now I'm blaming myself for my son. So I spent 40 days with him until we could find him a place to go and get better. And, my job was to stay awake 24 hours to make sure he was safe. And we get through to the date that we're bringing him up on December 8th of that year, 2018. And as we get up there, my parents came up with us, my ex-wife and the other two kids came up with us. And my son, who we're dropping off there, points to my parents and say, I hope nothing happens to them while I'm here. Mm-hmm. And I say, honey, nothing's going to happen. Worry about your health. Your health is most important. And Christmas Eve of 2018, my dad goes to the bathroom, sits on the toilet, strains, perforates his bowel, goes into septic shock. And 3 weeks later, my dad passes away in intensive care. He was a healthy 80-year-old. And of course, with my son saying that he had a feeling and we kept him up there, you can just imagine the repercussions of all of that on the entire family. So at that point, I'm a shell of a man, but I stay alive because I want to get my kids and my mom through it. And I got through it by what men are supposed to do. Suck it up, man up, don't show emotions, shun your support systems. And on the other side, my kids and my mom seemed relatively okay, and I was empty. And that's when it kind of all started, that, Drew, how am I going to go in from the caving in stage to the coping stage? How am I going to get through this? And I started to really think about clarity of purpose in my life. And that's where the authenticity started to really come to head, because once I started to self-reflect and be self-aware and find out my purpose in life and why am I here, I'm only going to find that out if I am my true self. Then I'm going to find out why I'm here. And that's where the journey really started.
You talk so passionately about that coping stage as the response, and the need to self-reflect, and then the need to understand our purpose. And yet you also talk, just so powerfully about the gender role of being a man. Mm-hmm. And having to feel forced to do things that almost sound, Drew, from listening to you, like they pose a barrier or a block to being able to do the self-reflection and to be able to find a sense of purpose. So how did you navigate through that, from the coping to what I assume you're going to get to is the crushing it?
Absolutely.
And what's the advice and counsel from men specifically? And I don't want this to sound to anybody in the audience like it's a man show, but this is intentionally about mindful man.
Right. Yeah. And just to mention, when we help men, we help the women in their lives. So this is about everybody. I was writing a book during all this time because I wanted to write a book and I had no content. Now my life had content to write a book about. And it was during that process that I came to that awakening, and I developed something called what I call the COPE paradigm to coming through stronger. And COPE is C is for clarity of purpose in your life. You need to find that first. And once you find that, it starts to shift your mind from a fixed to a growth mindset. And I started to see things I used to see as barriers. I started to see them as opportunities. So that's the O in COPE. So now, instead of seeing things as barriers, I saw these challenges as opportunities instead. And it wasn't enough for me just to see them differently. You have to take massive action. So I started to see opportunities in places I'd never seen before and take some risks and say, well, let me try this. And each massive action earned me some success. I started to win a little. And I decided to start celebrating those wins. because more often than not, we wait till the end to try to celebrate the big win and we never get there. So I started to celebrate these small wins. And as I did, progression started to occur. That's the P in COPE. So I started to progress towards a stronger man because I was starting to do things that I've always wanted to do, take a little risk and be more myself. And that's how you grow. And so once I started to progress and gain more and more wins and celebrate them, and the confidence started to go, the next step is evolution. You evolve. And to me, that's the coping stage, right? So I have 3 stages: caving in, coping, and crushing it. And you have to go through that clarity of purpose to bridge the gap between the caving and coping. And coping is an iterative process. And so I see myself right now in the high end of progression and the low end of evolution and the tail end of coping. And that final bridge from coping to crushing is that evolutionary process where you transform into that authentic man who lives by integrity, doing service for others and kindness. And I don't believe anybody gets to the top of the crushing it stage. It's a journey, and I'm in the process of bringing people with me on that journey. And so that's what it's really all about. It's clarity of purpose in life, seizing opportunities, progressing and evolving, and you see the light, and then you want to bring people with you.
And that is phenomenally powerful. And yet, because you and I, the first few times we talked, I kept saying as I listened to your story and kind of your epiphanies, it's and yet the notion of meaningful evolution, right? You've got your cope and you're kind of getting towards the progression and evolution. You talk about kindness and you talked about integrity, and it almost sounds like those are, again, contrary to what it takes from a man's perspective to a cutthroat world to survive. And then you take corporate, and you and I were just talking about corporate. Now you take a man maybe at the tail end or in his 50s who's forced with doing a job search, and they're trying to fit into a pyramid, which is the 20th century, and it's command control. And the very structure of it creates a stress, toxicity, trauma, and cutthroat. So how do you achieve that? In your mindset, in your framework, in your experience, how do you coach other people in your practice to become fully evolved and their true authentic self, not give up their values, and to navigate job searching? I know it's a lot. No, I'm out of verbal diarrhea, but I want to get there.
Yeah, I'd say one of my keynote talks is called Authentically You: How to Navigate the Workforce with Integrity and Impact. And I usually I always offer the same scenario: the Drew of old versus the Drew of now, and how did I handle it, and how would I handle it now? Would have I, if I am in corporate, and a lot of it is in obviously the mindset to know that when shit happens, and I excuse my language, but when
it's all good, this is a family friendly zone.
Yeah, when shit happens, depending on your mindset, shit either happens to you or shit either happens for you. The old Drew, the stuff happened to me and I was a victim and I blamed. And when you have that type of mindset, every thought, every word, and every behavior that follows brings you down that rabbit hole of this is awful, this can't get better, and you just keep doing the same stuff and digging that hole deeper. When you believe stuff happens for you, that's that shift from barrier to opportunity, and you realize that things aren't happening to you. Other people are doing things. 10%, like we've heard, is what happens to you, and 90% is how you respond to it. And I purposely didn't say react to it. We do not want to react. We want to be proactive. We want to proact. And so that's really about how do you respond to something. And often it's that deep breath that gets you out of that emotional ego, puts you back in that rational ego state, because you want to make your decisions and your mindset based on rationality and not emotions.
I get that. You live that.
Yep.
It's relatively straightforward to comprehend that.
Yeah.
And yet there's a visceral we react. And
Always a
especially,
visceral reaction. I say the deep breath, though, actually does change things in your brain and gets you at least there to take the clouds and the smoke away. What I often do, and I do this in every conflict situation, is I know that the first three words in every sentence are the most important three words. So, and what I mean by that is if I asked you, Ethan, and this happened in the hospital setting a lot, a doctor would do something, make a decision, clinical decision. And back then I would ask, Doc, why did you decide to do A and B instead of C? When I started that way, I put the doctor on the defensive, and I was accused of questioning his practice pattern. Now what I do, I put the words, for my curiosity. Why did you do A and B instead of C? You're the expert. I'm really curious. It changes the mindset of the person receiving that information to, this guy respects me. He is really curious. He cares to know why. I'm the expert. Let me share with him. And I would really ask for advice and sharing because it would make me understand better. And I think just obviously your mindset has to be, they're not attacking me, this is happening to me. If it's happening for me, let me out of curiosity find out why. And words are powerful. And if you say it sincerely with body language and integrity and you truly, truly mean it, things change, because what happens when we assume what reactions are going to be, usually our assumptions are completely different from what would happen had we actually approach it. So a lot of people in the workplace avoid situations. Well, I'm not going to say anything because if I say anything, this might happen.
yeah,
More often than not, this is not going to happen. What happens is usually not as bad as what we're putting in our heads.
right. It sounds like one part presupposing we can picture the outcome. The other is, I mean, it's a passive aggressive conflict avoidance. So
Yeah, absolutely. And conflict avoidance, and you think about the human brain, the fight or flight, right? That comes from the amygdala. It's the oldest part of our brain. So that's the caveman times where a tiger is rushing at you and you either fight or you flight, right? Well, there's another part, an F to this, and that's freeze. And freeze comes from the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain for judgment and decision-making. And that takes a lot longer for that part of your brain to mature. You know, for men, it's usually 30, 33 years old for that part of our brain to mature. So at a younger age, we're really geared to make bad decisions at a young age. But at age 50, we now are able to freeze, take that deep breath and say, wait, I'm not going to fight. I'm also not going to run away. Let me think about this. And to me, that's the important piece that we lose in corporate because we are trained to be fight or flight. And either one of those is going to cause some angst because the flight is the avoidance and the fight is a fight. It's not to determine out of curiosity why.
Now we take that construct, right, which is the need for transformation in mindset collectively in
Right.
corporate America and private sector. But then now we kind of move it back to the individual. And the individual is a man in, let's say, the middle of his career. He's been working for 20 to 30 years. He finds himself all of a sudden in a situation of transition, uncertainty, fear, stress, trauma himself. What's the advice and counsel for somebody who's trying to navigate through your COPE methodology? And also, can you share how that plays into the mindful man movement and kind of connect some tissue there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So my coaching practice, which is more of a mentorship, because mentors are individuals who have gone through the fire with the people they're helping, so they can really go into the empathy route and walk with them, with having an emotional connection to their success. And the way I went through mine, along with the COPE paradigm, was also about learning forgiveness and releasing regret for the past. Many men who are in their 50s in corporate are taking all the bad stuff from previous jobs and kind of bringing it with them. And when you start to regret ways you behaved in previous jobs or blame yourself and all that, it kills you for the future. So to get out of that past, and because the past does not define us, I learned how to forgive myself for decisions and behaviors I made from the past, because I didn't have the tools to make those decisions like I have those tools now. And I also learned to forgive others for they didn't know what they didn't know, the error of their ways. So once you're able to wipe out the regret from the past using forgiveness, it brings you closer to living in the present. And now you're forced with the present. Well, sometimes even when you're in the present, you're fearful of the future because you tied a lot of what's going to happen in the future to what happened in the past. So now that you kind of don't define yourself by the past, you learned from it instead, right? Lessons learned instead of things you wish didn't happen. The future, the way I got away from fear of the future was to, from the first two chapters of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, is desire and faith.
Cool.
And desire is tied into what's my purpose in life, what's my legacy, what do I want people to think of me when I'm gone, what do I want to do for the rest of my life. That desire piece starts, and the thinking of self-reflection helps you with the purpose of your life. Purpose is about the future, right? So desire and faith, a higher power, right? Before I told you I blamed the wife, the boss, and myself. I also blamed God for taking my dad. I learned to get over that, to forgive that. And now faith in a higher power. For me, it's God. For somebody else, it's the universe or whatever they believe in. An individual needs to believe in a higher power because we can't do it alone. So desire and faith helped me wipe out that fear of the future. So now I have forgiveness, desire, and faith. And to live in the present moment, it's been gratitude, Ethan. I'm grateful to be sitting here with you now. I'm grateful for my cup of coffee, and not just the coffee, all the steps it took for me to get that coffee. I was able to get out of bed. So gratitude eliminated my victim and blame mindset. So you think about the human brain. We can change our brain whenever we want. So think about a life where you have regret, victim and blame mindset, and fear. And now all that's gone, and you got forgiveness, gratitude, desire, and faith. You do those four things over and over and over again, create a habit, then all that goes into the subconscious of your brain, and that's what you start to believe. The brain believes what we tell it. So in the coaching practice that I do, we get to all those things by first working on the man's identity. Because Ethan, you're going to define your own identity. No one else is doing it for you. So Ethan's going to define his identity. You're going to design it, right? And what your desired identity is. And now when you know who you are, we go to phase 2 and we start getting rid of all those self-limiting beliefs that were tied to that old identity that was really never yours. And so once we get rid of those self-limiting beliefs, now Ethan knows who he is and where he's going. We're going to start having you write your own story. So it all starts with acknowledgement of thoughts that helps mold that identity, right? Then we start to harness our emotions, master our emotions. That eliminates all those self-limiting beliefs. And now that you have an awareness of your thoughts and you've mastered your emotions, darn it, you're going to now lead with purpose. And once you're at that leading with purposes, you can write your own story and other people aren't writing it for you. You have that strong mental mindset because I want to help middle managers, because I was a middle manager. You take heat from the top, heat from the bottom. You need to have that. We talked about kindness. I call it like redefining what it is to man up, and that you can still have strength with empathy. And to me, there's a difference between nice and kind. I used to be a nice guy. Nice guys finish last. Nice guys getting walked all over. People pleasers are nice guys. People pleasing is manipulative. Why is it manipulative? You put a mask on to fool people. The authenticity piece is you take the darn mask off. I am who I am, right? You end up being kind. And kind means because you're authentic, because I told you about that progression after you take on opportunities, you start to grow. my self-identity, I started to develop strong self-trust for myself, strong self-respect, strong self-love. I was now self-confident, strong self-identity. Now I build a boundary around my self-identity. I'm still going to be empathic. I'm still going to do good for others when it's not going to hurt me. And I'm protecting my self-identity so I'm not walked all over. So now I'm a kind man, not nice.
And the last time we were chatting, and you kind of framed out as you just did the distinction between the nice and the kind, and you overlay it onto your schema or your framework of this cope approach. And you were kind enough to also say right now where you're at is progression, getting towards the evolution stage, and not being quite there, but a work in progress. As you kind of refine or kind of work continuously on your sense of purpose and your legacy, it's an appropriate time as we kind of look to the end of our time together so far, at least for this session.
Yeah.
Episode. That was Freudian.
Cool.
The sense of legacy. I'd love it if you could just share for a moment or two the sense of purpose you have as you look to Drew
Absolutely.
in the future. Like, where do you see yourself kind of looking down the road as far as legacy? And it could be the mindful man movement. It can be from caving into crushing it, or just thoughts you have about looking forward.
No, it's a good question. I want to make an impact one man at a time. And I'm starting with the two men in my family. I got two sons, 20 and 22. Children emulate the behavior of their parents. I mean, it's inevitable, whether they respect their parents or not. It's something that happens. And, aside from deciding not to give up when all that stuff happened to me, my children saw that. My children also saw that I was beaten up in corporate, and I'm not going to take it anymore. So rather than say, I'm going to fix them, I'm going back to corporate, I'm going to be a different person, I'm saying, screw that. I'm going on my own. I'm making more of an impact on the outside because I'm making the rules. And my rules abide by my standards, which will not waver anymore. And I'm talking about that integrity and truth and all that. Mm-hmm. And so I want to be that man who shows up, doesn't waver on my standards. My belief systems, I'll have an open mind and I will listen to others, right? I want to be there for others I want to make an impact. I want everybody to know that when you're going through something, you're not going through it alone. Most of us think, oh, no one else must be going through what I go through. I'm not talking to anybody. I share my story, and my legacy is going to be that I'm encouraging every man and woman out there to share your story. A big reason why we don't share our stories, Ethan, is because fear of criticism.
Yep.
One of the 6 basic fears human beings have, and again from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, is fear of criticism. Fear of poverty is like number 1, fear of criticism is number 2. But people are afraid of poverty too, because what are people going to think of me if I don't have money? I'm telling you, if you stop thinking what everybody thinks about you, you can be your authentic self. The minute you care what other people think about you is the minute you lose your authenticity. Now, I'm not saying don't care about people. I didn't say that.
That's not what you're saying.
About people, you don't care what about people think of you.
That would when you say that, it makes me. I have this like Tourette syndrome flashback 15 years to when I was laid off my last corporate job, and it took quite a while to stop thinking about myself in terms of how other people may look at me. Well, he can't keep a job. He wasn't successful in corporate. He wasn't this. He wasn't that. And then once you take that away and say, as you said, I no longer care. I'm taking the power away from you in terms of what I think you care about me. And now I'm going to empower myself by realizing the next chapter is how I write it.
Absolutely.
And I love that. I love that
the way you just said that. Ethan, the greatness is right inside of you, Ethan. It's there. It's always been there, right? You allowed corporate to trounce on your greatness, right? Your greatness is there. Our younger child, the young Ethan, the young Drew, it's in us. We've been saying no to it since we turned 18. Since people said, now you're an adult, now you go in the workforce, and you're not a child anymore. You're an adult. Adults don't laugh. We don't joke. We don't do this. We don't believe it. The greatness is inside of us, man. Just pull it out and really be instead of do. See, manifestation, when people talk about that, it goes in a specific order. You have to be first. Then you do, and then you have. We're all trained to do the opposite. If I have this, then I'll do this, then I'll be this. That's a bunch of bull. You be who you are. The greatness is inside of you. Because you are who you are, you start to do stuff. And then you have. You guys, we can manifest anything we want if we truly believe we have control over our thoughts, which we do.
And I'm going to
take the power. Go ahead.
No. I'm going to jump in as we kind of wrap up, and I'm going to ask you next how people who want to say, I need to talk to Drew directly and really drill into this, is the two most powerful words in the human language, which you just said, but I want to make sure we capture that before we get off screen today, is I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so powerful. Mm-hmm. There's the I can, I will, I do, and therefore I am. But I love the way you frame it as start with now, I am.
Yeah.
And that's that. If there was nothing else we could leave people with today, I'd love to do that. And then to also ask Drew, for those people who want to further the conversation with you one-on-one, and I'll put the link to some of your profile stuff below, but how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Best way, email me, drew@profitcompassion.com. My website's profitcompassion.com. Start out there. I mean, hell, I do a free webinar the third Thursday of every month about how to get over self-sabotage, which is the number one thing that's blocking you from your goal. Yes, right now it's only for men. At some point I'll do one for women. But get over self-sabotage, free webinar. I also host a men's group, virtual. And that's another way. There's so many things that we do, but let's get on a conversation. Email me first. I shoot you my calendar link. We get on a call. We get to know each other. We share our story. That's a prerequisite when you get on a call with me. I'll share with you my story. You share yours. You know why, Ethan? We heal from within when we share our story.
And
it's inevitable.
I get it. And it's a rhetorical, you asking me, you know why, Ethan? Because you and I did that the first time we spoke. And right away, it was like the clicking. The guards coming down, the true authentic self coming forward and enabling us to go down the path of pursuing a relationship together.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, people are probably looking at us and thinking, well, we've known each other for years. We've had one conversation. This is a second, right?
Sure. Yeah. But you know how sometimes you just click, especially when you bring your authentic self to it and you're in a state in your mindset where you're willing to embrace that. And we both are there. So, hey, Drew, before we could end our time together, I just want to say thank you so much for a number of things. Thank you for agreeing to come on. Thank you for being your true and authentic self. And thank you for sharing some of this healthy mindset that I know we need much more of.
My pleasure. And I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you. And you're a good man, Ethan. Keep doing what you're doing, my friend.
Oh, always. So if, as you heard, if you want to get in touch with Drew, email him, drew@profitcompassion.com. Check out his website, profitcompassion.com. I'll put the links below if you like what you heard. Kind of just smash the subscribe button and like and share, and be on the lookout for the next episode. So thank you for checking in with us today and listening to Drew Deraney.